You watching this right now, I need you to be my eyewitness and testify if asked. When people ask me, Eva, do you have any pets? And I reply, yes, I'm growing a sort of shrimp community. And they doubt me, they think I'm lying. I want you to be my witness that this is true. Look at them. You see them? These are my shrimps. They're called actually aqua dragon. They're not technically speaking shrimps. I know there is a scientific name for them. But they are as real as me and you. I've been quite proud of, how much they've grown in the last month. And hopefully they will keep growing and thrive. And I am not a liar. But welcome. Let's chat about comics. I'm gonna put my community of shrimps sort of down. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, The Ink the Reader. My name is Eva and today we are in a different location. Today we are downstairs, we are in the living room, the only room that it's available at this time of the evening without any major noise or interruptions happening. So I wanted to film this and I decided to come downstairs. But at the same time, it's also the only room in the house where I've been banished from putting any books, because you can't have books fucking everywhere. For now, I don't have any books in the living room, therefore we just get a green wall. But that's fine. I wanted to take this occasion to sit down and talk briefly about my favorite comics of 2024. I'm just mindful that we are already halfway through January 2025 and I had not really done or taken much time during the previous year to talk about comics on my channel. I think in 2024 in general I didn't read as many and therefore the content on my channel related to comics also diminished. And yeah, but there are still a few things I've read and I really enjoyed. So yeah, there are no new releases or anything. Like the majority of the series I'm reading are well known, and if you've been following me around you probably know what to expect more or less from this video, but I still thought it was worth putting it out there. And I'm also drinking my usual daily green disgusting juice. If you've been following, you know that I drink these and I get green mustache while I drink these. So yeah, if it happens, you know why I am drinking this while filming. So this is gonna be a blend of graphic novels and manga. I'm gonna go in order of, the 9 best volumes I have read. I tried to come up with 10, but the reality is that because I read a couple of whole series of manga, I believe, exclusively manga, I've spent the majority of the year reading through those series, so I did not have a 10th thing to bring to the table and I didn't want to force myself. So when I decided to put in what were the best of the year 2024, those are the titles I came up with, those are the ones we are going with. So at number 9 we had one of my most recent reads, and I think I put this at number 9 just because I read only 1 volume, so I had a very promising start, but it's just a start, and because it's a manga series we know that those tends to be on average quite lengthy and you need a few volumes to really know if you love it or not. I have good vibes, left me with a good premonition that I might enjoy the rest of the series, but we will see. And I'm talking about Banana Fish. Banana Fish is a shoujo manga series, and I believe from the back it says one of the most famous and best-selling in Japan series. It's completed. It's quite hard to find some volumes that I know of because I looked up online to find the next ones, and it's the story of Ash. Ash is the adopted son of a crime lord who's been really using him throughout the years, and now he's getting to that age where he's starting to rebel, and he's a very skillful killer. He's particularly good at aiming and with his weapons. And as I said, he's in that age when he's not happy anymore with just living with the crime lord and serve him, and he wants also to find answers about what happened to his older brother who went to the Vietnam War, and when he came back he was never the same. It reminded me a lot of Godfather vibes. It's different, but it reminded me a bit of that. And in all of this, I would say sort of a mess, very fast-paced. You have this journalist who is, for a series of events, trying to approach Ash. and make his acquaintance. And I do not know if eventually this is gonna be a romance between the journalist and Ash. I have no idea what to expect, but as I said, this was very intriguing. I think it was one of the lengthiest in terms of dialogues manga that I can remember reading this year. It's quite dense. I took some time reading these, but by no means I found these boring or slow paced. Actually, it's very action packed. It's just that there were a lot of things in volume number 1. There were also a lot of hints of bigger mysteries that we need to resolve. I also really enjoyed the main characters. Ash has a kind of mysterious vibe around him, the kind of bad boy vibe. He's definitely got that going on, but I can definitely see there is a heart of gold underneath. So I do not know exactly. I would categorize this as a thriller series, like gangster series for now. But if you read it, I would love to know what you thought about the whole thing, if you read the whole thing. And I just, without any spoilers, I do not know exactly what genre this sits in at the moment. Is it the same that the first volume promises, or it gets completely different throughout the series? Let me know a bit of information without spoiling anything, please. I will show you the first page because I think it's the least spoilery one. And yeah, the art style is very much like these. Okay, so then we move on to number 8. Number 8 is a series I've read, probably like the last volume I read in summer, and I must say it didn't stick with me, the actual plot, as much as Banana Fish plot did, but because I've read 3 volumes of these, and throughout the 3 volumes I've read thus far, the quality has stayed the same. I thought like he deserved like a spot more, if it makes sense. But I'm talking about Day Dark by Hayashida. And this is her new series. I believe it's ongoing. Correct me if, you know, by chance she has finished it. Now I'm gonna show you the first page of this volume, which is volume 3. It is a bit gory though, so you're aware there is blood and something like that. So you can turn your face or just, move on from this video if you don't want to see it. But this is the first page of volume 3. Now I do also show you the art because it's one of my favorite things about Hayashida. I love the grotesque art. I think she comes up with some wild ideas on how to dismember bodies and showing to us. So this is the story of Za Sanko, the most wanted man in the whole universe, because if you capture him and murder him and consume his bones, your biggest wish will come true. And therefore, people are after him, and he's fleeing from everyone and everything with a magical backpack that it kind of becomes a skull, like has the face of a skull. And they're going on adventures while trying to stay alive. It sounds bizarre because it is bizarre with Hayashida. So of course it is quite bizarre. It is definitely a sci-fi horror. I don't know if you can call it also like a fantasy. There is definitely a lot of blood and violence, but it's almost done in a humoristic style, so it's almost like a horror comedy to a certain extent. I do not want to spoil any of the content because I think part of enjoyment of reading this manga is just opening up a new volume and discovering the new marvelous and absurd ideas that Hayashida has come up with. I'm just gonna say, if you've read up to this volume, do you, at least up to this volume, do you know like the mole, the concept of the mole she came up with? I generally had to stop and think about what a freaking genius this woman, I think it's a woman from my understanding, this mangaka is. Like, she has truly ideas where I'm like, please never stop writing stuff, because in a million years I could have not come up with something like that, and I am blown away how creative she is, even in the horror element. I think she's very creative. I do think that I read this at the perfect time because I was just finishing Doradoro, another series by her, and I kind of missed that style that's unique to her, and therefore picking this up, it gave me like, okay, I can stay in her world a bit longer. I can live this alternative reality where nothing makes sense and yet everything does. It does because, again, it's the same mangaka. There are a couple of characters that really remind me of a couple of characters from Doradoro, but as of now, it is unique enough that I don't mesh them up in my mind, so they don't blend. And yeah, They dark, I will definitely continue on. Okay, of the next one, I have actually read a few volumes, but I'm holding on the last one I've read thus far. I am making my way through One Piece, so I am up to volume 17. I know, I am so far back, am I? I have got so much to go, but I was gifted a couple of birthdays ago by dear friends of mine the first box set, and I'm actually taking my time with it because I do want to then acquire the next box set, but it's quite expensive, so I'm no rush. And this year I think I've read around probably 5 volumes or something of the sort throughout the year, so slowed down a lot. I think after Nami's story, things didn't live up to the extent of enjoyment. I know that I will pick up again. I know that I am still having so much fun. I think one thing I do love about One Piece, which I don't give you a synopsis for because probably you're so fed up with hearing synopsis of a very popular series like One Piece, I think it introduces itself. One thing that I always enjoy is the camaraderie, and also is Luffy's personality. I think as someone who's, you know, very much into going dark fantasy and I like the bad guy in the picture or whatever, the older I am getting, the more I appreciate characters like Luffy. And I think having someone such pure-hearted and so though strong-willed and adamant that he's gonna do all he can above and beyond what he can for his friends and for people that he thinks deserve, is a character that really truly stuck with me the most. And I know a lot of people love Zoro, and I do love Zoro. I do love them all, to be fair. There is no one single character of the main crew thus far we have accumulated and gathered throughout our journey that I dislike. Yes, of course, Zoro comes with, you know, it's a kind of morally grey bad boy. I really enjoy the I really enjoyed the Netflix adaptation. Really liked Zoro character a lot. In the manga, Luffy has a special place in my heart, and yeah, the older I get, the more I appreciate the good guys. And Luffy is a very good guy. It's always fun. I have always the same critique, has been like this for 17 volumes. I do not think it's gonna go anywhere. My critique is gonna stay and I will have to live with it, which I'm completely fine. I do think that the combat scenes are not the greatest, are actually quite confusing and messy, and unfortunately some volumes are packed with them. I do not mind how slow this is. I do mind when a volume is packed with action scenes, because again I get distracted because I don't think they are drawn, how you want to say, good enough. But all the rest is great and I'm on board, and I will ship with this crew until I can, until the day that they get to their treasure. Okay, next I will put Lady Mechanica. Lady Mechanica, I must say that I've read 2 volumes this year, so volume 6 and 7, and volume 7 in particular is the one that deserves a spot on this list. So not to say that number 6 wasn't good, but if I'd read only number 6, it wouldn't have made the list. Lady Mechanica is a steampunk fantasy that takes place in Victorian era, and you follow a memory and you follow a woman who's haunted by the fact that she woke up one day without no memories, no recollection whatsoever who she was, and she is now part woman and part robot. She has mechanical parts, and she does, in the volumes precedents to this, so in the 6 volumes I had read before these, she goes up to adventures where she basically helps good guys capturing the bad guys, and these are a mixture of monsters from traditional fantasy that, you know, there are vampires, there might be werewolves or whatever, and then you're thrown in with the steampunk element and the robots and so on. So it's a bit of a mesh, and in each volume thus far she had kind of solved the case, and I enjoyed it. I thought the art style, which I'm going to show you in a second, is what captured me the most. The thing that I was the most impressed about was the art style compared to, you know, I would say the actual plot. Show this page, hopefully you can see. And because I tend to rate graphic novels, especially based on, yes, the art, but also the content, so try to kind of have a mash up of the two. And because I do this thing where I kind of both sides of the art and the plot have to come together, Lady Mechanica, thus far that I can remember, never made into my top of the year, because it was always the lack of the actual plot. Yes, it was entertaining, but nothing special. Now, what we get in volume 7 is part of Lady Mechanica origin story, and I think we get the most salient part of her story, of when she was quite young and she wakes up on this mad scientist table and she has been changed. And at this point, when this volume starts, pretty much from the beginning, it becomes very gruesome, very bleak, and they are the elements of a Victorian Gothic horror story in here. They're thrown in here with a bit of steampunk. They are, for me, the perfect blend. Like, seeing Lady Mechanica surviving the place where she was, at least as a young woman / child, that was amazing. I can only describe these without giving any spoilers as it reminded me a lot of BioShock. You know, that BioShock, the game, there are some very bleak scenes that happen, very specific, you know, famous, haunted, and where horrible things happen in those places. And experiencing BioShock, some scenes of BioShock the game, reminded me a bit of what we experienced with Lady Mechanica here. Now, this is not a big volume, it doesn't go into like extreme details, but it becomes scary at times. I was truly distraught at times reading this. I was upset, and I got so many answers, and finally Lady Mechanica acquired a layer that she didn't have before. Now she is someone who I can actually feel profoundly for, and therefore I really enjoyed this volume, and I felt like, please, more of these. Now, my fear, in all honesty, is that once this is done, once the origin story has been tackled and covered, we're gonna go back to, you know, more episodic stuff, her solving cases. I do hope not. I do hope that this is not a series where go on too long. I think it will have to, for me at least, reach its conclusion relatively soon. And I do hope that now that we have the origin story, actually the only thing we have left with is, you know, the ultimate revenge. I hope we go down that path. I hope it's sorted out in a few volumes and they stay as horror based as this was. Hope is the last to die, as we say. So on number 5, I will put, and I just kicked the table, I will put JoJo's Bizarre Adventures. I have read part 2 of Battle Tendency, which is made up of 4 volumes, and I believe I read them all in 2024. I know that JoJo is very famous, but I heard also people like really disliking JoJo, which is completely fine. I don't think it is for everyone, as nothing is for everyone, to be fair. So let's premise that. But JoJo is for me. I wouldn't describe this as having like arcs. It's more like having mini series in the same world, right? Because you have the first trilogy, you got a character, and then in the second one you follow the descendant of that character, and I think it's kind of moving down that path of following different descendant in each one, kind of mini series. So the second one I preferred overall, the second one to the first one. I do think that it makes more sense to read them in order. I know that probably they can be read as standalones, and I believe that the anime adaptation starts from this volume. But I am someone who is very anal, is that how you say, where, you know, I need to start from the first series and move on. And to be fair, so many characters have a cameo in these that, you know, if you've not read the first series, then you wouldn't catch up on those kind of characters, so you wouldn't know who they are and so on. And at the end of the day, JoJo Bizarre Adventures is about good versus evil, and both parties have this kind of powers that they are very weird. They are not well explained. They have a whole magic system, sort of like, it's almost like magical martial arts. They have a specific name. They use the elements, and they can put their bodies up to certain stressors, and they can do all sorts of stuff through this kind of weird martial arts. And in the first trilogy, in the first 3 volumes, part one, as you want to call it, I struggled a bit at times because the explanation is, in my opinion, quite poor, and therefore it's also nonsensical. Like it's a kind of thing that, yeah, I don't think it takes itself too seriously, and therefore I always struggle to take it too seriously. Or maybe it does take itself too seriously, but for me it's a bit absurd. So I really had to suspend belief. From the body proportions to the magic system, it is bizarre exactly what it is. However, once I got in the mind of, Eva, this doesn't have to necessarily make sense. This is pure imagination, left running wild, and just follow. There is a scene in volume 2, I think, of this part of the series, and they have to climb a pillar, and there is this oil coming down, and the explanation of how they climb a pillar made of oil, I generally laughed, but in the best way possible, because at the same time, if you really thought about the situation they were in, it was actually quite dire of a situation. So it takes these kind of elements which you say, well, I've never read something about oil, like olive oil. And, you know, the challenge that our heroes have to face is to climb a pillar which is enveloped in olive oil. And yet it keeps the tension going. Yeah, I wanted to read, I wanted to see what happened. I also really enjoyed these enemies that they have, because they are almighty. They are invincible enemies, and the amount of thrashing, the amount of battles near the death they have to do in order to fight these. It reminded me a bit like of Dragon Ball, those kind of enemies that they looked like they could never be beaten, and it would take like a whole year of episodes for them to beat those. So it's the same concept where, you know, you are defying odds that are so massive that no one should be able to climb above them, and they do it, and they do it in sometimes absurd, ridiculous, but also very entertaining ways. So yeah, I have fun with JoJo. At times that's all I want, is generally having a story that's just a story. It's a story that makes me question physics, it makes me question body proportions, or, you know, it makes me question everything. There is this lady, for example, this one here. She's called Lisa. Like Lisa space Lisa, and at no point for 4 volumes, hundreds of pages, no one ever thinks of cutting her name down to one Lisa. She's always Lisa, and every time I read her name I have a smile on my face, because it makes no fucking sense. Just call her Lisa, right? It's like every time you call me, it's Eva went there. Eva, what are you gonna do? Eva, what do you think about this? Just call me it, right? It just makes no sense. So nothing in this unpacked makes sense. Nothing. And I loved it. And I don't know what else to say. Doro, number 4. Now, these would have been... I debated a lot with Doro. Because of a lot of elements. Said that Doro was one of the best experiences when it comes down to reading manga that I had, and it's one of those series that made me think like I need to read more manga. So there is a part of me that's eternally grateful to Ayashida and Doro because they did the trick. Them, Berserk, which I've read a couple of years ago, they really consolidated the thing that I am also someone who enjoys reading manga a lot. And after them, I went on and read so much more. So gratefulness aside though, I'm giving you a quick premise of Doro. Doro is, again, sci-fi horror, I would say. You might recognize the heart because it's the same as Day Dark. It's a completed series of 23 volumes. This is a shonen, I believe. It's for adults, it's targeted to adults because it's full of horrific things happening, and blood and dismemberment and so on. And in the very first volume you follow Kaiman. Kaiman is living in the hall, a place where humans have been reclused. They live there in miserable conditions, very dystopian vibes. Humans are at the bottom of a train, and there are sorcerers that access the hall through portals, and they use humans for their experiment. And Kaiman, our main protagonist, has been victim of one of those experiments. Someone has taken him, his human body, and transformed him into a Kaiman. And he has no recollection of his human life, but he's trying to seek answers: who he is, where he comes from, who transformed him into a Kaiman, and so on. And so what he does is seeks sorcerers that come to the hall for victims. He fights them, try to eat them, and there is a human head inside his Kaiman head that once he's trying to ingest the sorcerer, will ask the sorcerer, are you the one that, changed me? Do you know what happened to me? He's trying to look for, the human head inside of him, recognizing the sorcerer potentially to find some answers. And then you follow Nikaido, his friend who's helping him on this path of seeking revenge or seeking answers. And she also happens to run a gyoza shop in the hall. So it's this team of two, these best friends that go around capturing sorcerers and looking for answers. And it's so much more than that, but that's a very beginning. That's how you start Doradoro. I love Doradoro because you also follow the bad guys, if you're gonna keep calling them that. So you follow, yes, Kaiman and Nikaido, but you also follow En, the boss of the sorcerers, and his family, very, again, gangster style, Padrino style, Godfather style. And I enjoyed almost En and his family more. They were more eccentric, even compared to Kaiman. So while Kaiman and Nikaido, they have a more serious part of the story, which was very much needed. I enjoyed discovering what happened to Kaiman, who he is, and blah blah. En and his family, they are just so bizarre. They provide the element of eccentric, humoristic, like it was kind of bad guys, but you kind of root for them. I don't know how to describe it. So I thought that we kind of follow both sides, and then it turns into something completely different by the end. I really appreciate it. Now, why this is a number 4 and not a number 1? I think it's not because necessarily of quality. I did enjoy the ending. I've had some issues with it, to the point that I thought it was good, but it wasn't as good as what preceded it. And there was also the last couple of chapters, I think because she had taken the time to develop these characters and we had so much time with them. And then when the end happens, there is a very abrupt happily ever after, or version of it at least. And I thought, well, you develop things at a certain pace, that's fine, and then you click, just something happened in the blink of an eye, goodbye. So I definitely thought that she could have had another volume, or at least a few more issues in, to make me acclimatize more to the fact that this was ending. So the end was a bit abrupt. I also did film at the time a spoiler-filled review of the end and my thoughts about it, and unfortunately lost the footage. And what happened is that when I sat down a couple of months after realizing that it happened, I did not have a clear picture in my mind exactly what had happened. Like, I know the general ending, but I realized that a lot of intricacies of it that at the time I had commented on had gone from my brain. And although this is a very convoluted plot, I would say you do need to read Doradoro quite fast because it's not an easy one to follow. I thought if the end had been so impactful, I would have remembered it more. From past experiences with books and stuff like that, if something really catches my attention, even if it's a bit more, on the convoluted side, I'm usually able to retain the memories of it a bit more. So the fact that I forgot so much about Doradoro, of the ins and outs, it made me think, is the end that good. I think it's good. I don't think it's that good, if it makes sense. So now, I don't know, I want to refilm that. I do want to share my honest, spoilery thoughts, but I do believe I need to reread a few volumes in order for me to do it. I need to maybe binge read the whole thing again and then kind of unpack it a bit more. By no means though I think this is overall negative though, because I think this is potential for a read, and now that I know a few clues here and there, I'm gonna have a totally different experience. I'm gonna have a more richer experience for it. And at the end of the day, Ayashida always has the most bizarre, quirky art style with horrific elements, and just it is brutal, and I love it for it. So I do think that, me rereading this is not something that I will feel very sorry about. I think actually I'm gonna have an amazing time rereading it. Number 3, I'm just going to hold on volume number 2, but volume number 1 as well. Anita Blake. This is The Laughing Corpse. I've also read Guilty Pleasure, the adaptation by Marvel of the first Anita Blake novel. This is the adaptation of the second novel. They did 3 novels in total. I have parts of volume 3, but I do not have all of them because they're very, very difficult to find. So I'm on the hunt of them, and while volumes 1 and 2 they made like a compendium of it, they didn't for volume 3, and I think they discontinued, they never continued on past volume 3. So this is a bit of a bittersweet entry for me, because you don't know this about me, but when I was probably like 15, 16, I became obsessed with Anita Blake series. Anita Blake is an urban fantasy series where you follow Anita Blake, a tiny but very, very sassy and tough woman who is a marshal, US marshal, and she's also one of a few licensed vampires killer for her town in USA. In this alternative reality, vampires have come out of their coffins and they are now roaming among humans. They need to respect certain laws though, and if they do not abide to those laws, then Anita is one of those that can be sent to officially kill them legally, basically. And you have, I don't know if you've ever watched True Blood on HBO. It's kind of sort of that concept by in every book, because this is a book series, and now I think it's still ongoing. We are at book number 25 or something. Every book there is a case that Anita has to solve, but then there is the intricacies of Anita, her involvement with the supernatural world, her love interests. We get into like a reverse harem situation, and there is a lot going on. I must say that if you're interested in the books, I personally loved the first 8 to 10 books. Then actually the sexual content take precedence at the cost of sacrificing the plot, and unfortunately it just goes downhill. I will always read Anita Blake because it's the kind of thing that I can't help myself. I have that kind of attachment, but by no means it is still good quality. However, the first 8 to 10 books, they were amazing, and these adaptations made me read again the books in a graphic novel format, so with a lot of colorful art. I particularly enjoyed the art. I thought it was amazing, and it really captured the vibe and the kind of gothic. I think it takes place, it's not in Louisiana. Where does it take place? St. Louis. So in a sense, it reminded me a bit of the Originals, the TV show. That kind of vibe. It took me back to the vibe of the first Anita Blake books, giving me a visual format for it, giving me the kind of sassy, leave me alone or I'm gonna cut your head off Anita. And Anita is not like a perfect character, but she's flawed, but she's also like scared and at the same time fearless. And I don't know how to describe it in any other way. I really enjoyed Anita as a character, again, up until book number 10. And reliving her story in this format, I loved it. I'm very sad that Marvel decided not to adapt the rest. I wished they had done the first 8 books, because I think that was the peak. The mysteries also, like the cases that Anita resolves in those books, was actually very, very interesting. You have necromancy. Because actually, yeah, I forgot to say that Anita Blake, she is also a necromancer. She can raise the dead. So she's a US Marshal, but she also raises the dead for a living. She gets paid to raise zombies. That was a very important piece of information to give you, actually. So you got necromancy, you got all sorts of supernatural creatures, you got vampires. All of those creatures have their own costumes and, you know, their own societies, their own like kind of, you know, level society. You have, the way it works is very well explained. The lore, I think, is another thing that is very well explained. And in all of these, you have this sassy little woman kicking asses. So yeah, loved experiencing again a book series I loved so much in a graphic novel format. And the case was so damn interesting. Okay, number 2, Hell's Paradise. I have to put this because I finished this series this year. I think I read the majority of it in 2023. And then I binge read the last few volumes in 2024. And Hell's Paradise, it's a 13 volumes shonen manga. In the first volume, you really focus on Gabimaru. Gabimaru had very no luck in life, no luck. He is a convicted criminal who's given a choice of going to this island and trying to find the elixir of eternal life, him and a bunch of other convicts. And if they go and find this elixir, they can get a pardon, so they can get, you know, free. They can be freed again and go back to their families or whatever they were doing before they were convicted. Only catch, no one ever got back from the island. So they're not the first expeditions. They know there have been previous expeditions to the island in, you know, the pursuit of this elixir, but no one ever came back. However, Gabimaru and a few others convicts, they start this journey. They all have a sort of guard, and their role of these guards are to kill the convict they have been assigned to in case the convict try to flee without actually carrying on their duty. And they all are thrust upon this island in, you know, looking for answers and for freedom for the convicts. Now, I think the way this finished, it was great. I think about manga series, I don't think it's that common to find, you know, short ones that do pack a punch and they do have enough time to conclude things perfectly. And I think this does. This is a journey that didn't feel like it needed to be longer, and it's not also a journey that needed to be any less than it was. And looking at each character actions up to the very end, I think he did a great thing because he mixed well characters behaving as they had done in their unique ways thus far. So they kept behaving in their own way, but at the same time they had developed. Most of them, either for the worst or for, you know, the better, they have developed throughout in a way that made sense. So in the end, their actions was true to them, but also did demonstrate the growth. And they had grown in line to how much it could have been expected for them to grow, if it makes sense. So no character acted abruptly as the hero out of the blue without having built that thing before, and no character behaved completely nonsensical for who they had been thus far just to move the plot along. I think it was the right balance, and it's not easy to achieve a balance because I think especially at the end, you know, the plot might take over compared to your characterization. And I think in here, everything evolved, everything was kept tense up until the very end. It was a satisfying end. It was an end that kept also, you know, space for you to imagine and to make your own guesses without both being an open ending. So not frustrating. I must say, I know I heard horrific things about the anime. Let me know if you watch the anime what you think. But the manga, I would definitely suggest it. One of you viewers actually suggested this series, and I'll be eternally grateful because Hell's Paradise is definitely one of, you know, my favorite completed series. It's not in the GOAT, not best of all time, but it's a series that I am so happy I've read, and I will continue recommending this because I do think it has a very nice character arc and a very fast-paced, interesting plot. And a number one, it could only have been that one this year, and I think specifically this volume. I have enjoyed all the other volumes I've read thus far, but specifically these actually 3 volumes because it's an omnibus, so it contains volume 13 to 15, technically speaking. And I'm talking about Vagabond. Yes, no surprise there, probably, if you've seen my wrap-ups. Vagabond volume 5 of these editions, so volume 13 to 15 of the normal editions, it's the best thing I've read this year. It's actually Vagabond, it's based on a true story, it's a true life figure, samurai or Ronin, I can never remember which one of the two. Based on a true life figure. This is based on, actually is called Miyamoto Musashi, complete name, and it's one of the most celebrated samurai in Japan, so based on a true story. And you follow Musashi, which when I pronounce it, I feel like Musashi, and Miyamoto, let's call him Miyamoto. You follow Miyamoto, who's seeking fame, who's seeking to become the best at his craft. I think there are a couple of things. First of all, including Berserk, and I can't choose between the two, Vagabond has the best art I've seen in manga ever. I love Berserk because of the imagination of Miura, and everything comes from drawing a manga that it's a green fantasy. However, when it comes down to character art and facial expression, I probably prefer overall Inoue's art. I know, I don't want to be sacrilegious right now. I love them both equally, but I think there are some strength in both of them. And when I read Vagabond, when I go through a panel of, because this is very much like a slow-paced story, it's very much based on someone striving for, you know, for improvement and for becoming the best, but it's also based on intricacies of humans' relationships and what it means to be enemies, but also to respect each other or to disrespect each other as enemies. It's a manga made of interactions that are as silent as actually spoken. And I think a lot of the things that happen between characters is in their gazes, is in their body posture, and it takes such skills I can't express with, you know, enough words or with the right words to say you can communicate, you can show me these body languages, facial language in such a way that I think I'm watching a movie. It's so clear at any point what these characters are thinking and feeling by just looking at, you know, someone who's silent and looking at the enemy or looking at their next challenge or looking at their loved ones, where there is that I feel like I'm watching something live. That is the power of this mangaka. So I can't take away the fact that part of the reason why I love Vagabond so much is because I think there is magic in these pages. It's the way he communicates humanity through these pages. It's above and beyond what I've seen thus far in any comic format. So that's one thing with Vagabond. I also did particularly love these 3 volumes because what we do here, we take a pause from Miyamoto, from Musashi. We take a pause from him and we're actually looking at, he is the most famous of his opponents. So we take the time to follow Kojiro from his sad childhood to being raised by a man who had given up on life, a man who had retrieved into the woods and say, I'm done with life, I'm not doing anything else, I'm just waiting to die. And then for a series of events, he needs to take care of Kojiro. And he is refusing to teach Kojiro sword fighting. He doesn't want to have anything to do with it anymore. He's given up. And yet Kojiro has this silent boy who doesn't speak. He is, though, a warrior at heart. And seeing the man, I never remember his name, but the figure, almost kind of father figure that he becomes, overcoming his own depression, his own, you know, feeling of having given up, feeling of I'm just waiting to die. Because of the love for this silent boy, it was just mind-blowing. It really touched on that kind of sensible side of me. And I know I'm following, you know, the enemy, but I do generally love when mangaka authors, whether takes the time to show me both sides, because therefore when things happen, no matter what happens, I will feel. The stakes are now higher, because somehow I might end up having a lot of feelings, negative or positive, whether they are, for the other characters as well. They're not just there to be the enemy figure and to be just, you know, have their ass kicked. So the main character looks good. They're actually humans. They have their own reasons for becoming what they have. And you can understand without justifying their actions, right? So when I looked at Kojiro, how he grew up, and the father figure that he finds in this man that raises him, I cried. Like, I had tears in my eyes at certain points. I guess I touch particularly to characters that I perceive as being full of shame, and I perceive this man, the father figure, as, you know, having to overcome his own shame. And it's such a tough challenge in life to just overcome our shame. And I don't know, something clicked. I ended up loving these 3 volumes a lot. I don't love Kojiro, but I see how he became and now I'm generally curious to know, now that he will meet, eventually we know that he will meet Musashi, and what's gonna happen. What's gonna happen to the father figure? Now I'm so invested in all of them that I feel like I actually took a break in the last couple of months from reading Vagabond, because I'm like, there are only 12 volumes out. Am I ready? And am I ready potentially to be disappointed? Can this man disappoint me? I prefer to hate the end, but I hope I don't feel lukewarm. I don't know how, because I think I'm so attached to all these characters that it's impossible. I just hope that he ends with a bang. Because of all the feelings and because of all the respect I have and the awe I have for his ability to express humans through art in black and white, Vagabond had to be in first place. I've rambled enough. Thank you guys so much for watching. What were your favorite of the year? Do leave your recommendation down below. I do pick them up now and then, I promise. It might just take some time. If you're new, I would love for you to subscribe, stick around, see my shrimp grow, talk with me about comics and books. I'll see you next time. Ciao!